What does a handshake represent? An introduction, a connection, a promise. Security Benefit began in 1892 when 11 men with $11 created the Knights and Ladies of Security with a handshake. Their single goal was to offer insurance protection to men and women regardless of wealth. What does a handshake represent? An introduction, a connection, a promise. Security Benefit began in 1892 when 11 men with $11 created the Knights and Ladies of Security with a handshake. Their single goal was to offer insurance protection to men and women regardless of wealth. Since then, much has changed. How you plan for your future, how you retire, how long you'll spend in retirement. What hasn't changed is our core commitment to simplify complex options and offer solutions that help you prepare for a comfortable retirement. Our enduring belief that everyone should be able to retire with confidence has driven decades of dedicated focus on the retirement market. We continue to look toward the future so we can help you plan for yours. As partners, Security Benefit. Our promise, helping you to and through retirement.
Thank you very much. It's truly a pleasure and an honor to be here with all of you. And I really want to thank my great friends at Security Benefit, without which this would not be possible. And I want to acknowledge that even though I'm not with you face to face, which I very much enjoy, there are ways that we're going to be able to be of real world immediate assistance to you. You will be able to receive some of the information that we'll be going over today from your Security Benefit wholesaler, as well as ways that I can help to support you in being able to prospect in this virtual and very, very different world. For those of you who are not familiar, my name is Serrano Kelly, and I'm going to share with you just a little touch about my background, just to give you perspective on what would have me think that this is an unparalleled opportunity for those of you who are looking to take your business literally to the next level. How am I going to be able to show you in this 50 minutes how you literally have access to limitless prospects? How can I show you how you'll be able to overcome some of the most difficult objections and the delay that is occurring for some people during this period of time? How will you unseat the other advisors, your competition? And what does it take to be consistently performing at the top of your game? Motivated to the degree that you feel like you want to literally run through walls. How is that all going to happen in this 50 minutes? And who am I to be able to give you that access, that ability? Well, again, for those of you who are not familiar with me, you are familiar with my hometown. I grew up in Brownsville, Brooklyn. And Brownsville, Brooklyn is famous for two things. One, it is the home of Iron Mike Tyson. And I know you all know Iron Mike. And the second thing is that at the same time that he and I were growing up in that neighborhood, it had the single highest murder rate in the country. I kid you not. By the time I was 16 years old, 50% of the kids that I grew up with actually never lived to see 60. It really was that bad. So at 16 years old, I escaped. I entered Vassar College. At age 20, I landed on Wall Street. I'm working at 44 Wall Street. I'm a cold caller, right? And if any of you have seen some of the various movies out there about Wall Street in the early 80s, yes, it really was that bad. And so, I at 23 years old, fought my way into Lehman Brothers. And in my first year of production, I did 400,000 in production in the early 80s in my rookie year, coming out of the ghettos of Brownsville. As you can guess, I wasn't exactly managing family money. Now, sometimes people say to me, you got to such a great start, why'd you stop, right? And at the end of my first year, I came into my office, I picked up the phone. On the phone was my kid's sister. And I told my family, don't call me during the business day. I'm on Wall Street. I'm a busy man. Only call me if it's an emergency. And it's only an emergency if somebody dies. And if somebody dies, don't call me. I can't help them. They're dead, right? Literally, I kid you not. I was that cutthroat about my business. Pick up the phone, my kid's sister, she's literally rambling. She's incoherent. I'm like, look, I have time because I can't talk right now. I'm busy, right? All of a sudden, she yells at me. I'm the oldest. You don't yell at your big brother. I'm like, have you lost your mind? Right? And that's when she shared with me that a space heater had fallen over in the house that we grew up in, and the wallpaper caught on fire. It was February, it was cold in the Northeast, and I'm proud to say that two of the boys, 10 and 12 years old, were on the second floor, and they had a clear pathway out of the house. But instead, they went up into the attic to get two of the girls. So when the firemen put the fire out, they found all four of the kids in the attic, all huddled in prayer, all dead. Single hardest moment of my life. And it was standing over their graves that I asked myself, well, what do I love? What am I passionate about? And I had to admit that what I love is helping people to achieve their full potential. You see, prior to that point, though it looks like I had, I was excelling, I just always had this feeling that I was capable of more, that somehow I just couldn't seem to unlock my full power. And that it looked good to everybody else, but, on the inside, the real deal. So fast forward, I joined the oldest and largest communications training company in the country. And within 4 years, I became $1 million producer and the single largest producer in that company and the industry's history. I'm coaching people like the president of Texaco, the CEO of companies like IBM, Xerox, AT&T, right? Mostly the Fortune 500. Offices on Park Avenue is where I worked out of. And while I certainly enjoyed that, I got an opportunity to spend 2 years as a media skills coach at the White House. So I transitioned into a public career, spent 2 years as a media skills coach, wrote a best-selling book called The Game, Win Your Life in 90 Days. I was on Good Morning America with that book. And that book shows conclusively how a person in literally just 90 days of coaching can systematically take their life to a significantly higher level. And to its credit, if you go online, the book's been made into 2 television shows. One where I turn around the life of a homeless celebrity called Broken Famous. Some of you, I'm going to date myself, you may remember Willie Ames from 8 is Enough or Charles in Charge. On ABC TV, I turn around literally an entire school system. And if you've been watching recently, you may have seen me on CNN, CNBC, Fox Business. There have been some 400 commercials about the documentary of my work, which is being delivered on PBS over some 200 stations. The process works 100% of the time for 100% of the people who use 100% of the process. And that seems like an awfully bold declaration. But it's not just the television shows that demonstrate that. It's not just the media. I think that your own sense of knowingness, your own ability to see what makes sense will clearly indicate to you that this is an incredibly rational process. You just need to follow the process. Now, I'm going to ask you to draw a diagram. And there are a couple of diagrams that tell a really big story. People get a lot out of the diagrams in the presentation, but they tell me, I get text messages and emails back about how they actually got even more out of it at a later date. So the first diagram is a triangle. And with this triangle, I want you to write the three factors that most determine your success and that you most need to modify here in this virtual world. So one of them is strategy. Strategy. So next to one side of the triangle, write the word strategy. On the other side, write the word tactics. At the bottom, write the word motivation. Strategy, tactics, and motivation, these three factors combined actually account for the vast majority of your success. I'm going to say that investments and investment solutions, those are table stakes, right? That's not ultimately the deciding factor in a person's success. It is more of these three factors. So strategy is about your ability to get in front of the right people at the right time. If you're right now experiencing limitless prospects, if you have more people to talk to who are right for your services than you know what to do with, then I don't know what to say other than congratulations. You have a brilliant strategy. If you're not in front of enough of the right people, if it never seems to be the right time, I don't care how good it sounds, you have an ineffective strategy. What you're going to see in today's conversation, today's training, is how to literally blow that apart and have access to limitless prospects. I think you'll agree when you see how we do that. Tactics. That's about your ability to be effective. And I want to acknowledge that there's a prior way that you were effective, but now much has changed. You might find yourself spending a fair amount of time delivering communications, selling, doing discovery, closing business, handling objections. Now you're over video. Listen, I'm fortunate, right? I spent a lot of years training people to be in front of the camera, right, as a media skills coach. And then I've had many television shows, and I've been on many television shows, so I've been in front of the camera. But now everybody's on camera. And how many people do you think have actually ever been trained? And you wonder why so many of the presentations that you go to, so many of the meetings that you go to over video are, shall we say, something less than awe-inspiring, right? But you know what? You could have the right strategy and be in front of the right people at the right time. You could have amazing tactics, know how to handle when people are saying that they have another advisor, know how to do deep discovery, know how to get people to trust you, know how to build rapport over video, right? Like literally, like you could be like Oprah, right? You're just so good in front of the camera, but it doesn't matter without the element that's at the base, which is motivation. Right, so let's say a person's got like an amazing Rolodex, right? Amazing Rolodex, great strategy, incredible tactics. They've got the gift of the gab, but they can't get out of bed. Do you see a problem with that? So I need you to understand that it doesn't matter if you have a great strategy and amazing tactics, because ultimately sales is always a numbers game. If you are not accountable for being consistent, it doesn't matter. And you've seen some very, very bright people and some very connected people fail in this business. It doesn't matter. Let's begin with strategy. And I want to show you conclusively how you literally are standing on a diamond mine, right? Like a diamond field, right? There's like a vein of gold, like right underneath your feet, but we're just not tapping into it. I want you to see immediately how you can have access to limitless prospects. But I need to walk you through an analysis. So again, helpful to have a pen and a piece of paper. Let me walk you through the analysis. The first thing that I want you to write down are some numbers. So just take down these numbers. 323-703-4830. That's 323-703-4830. There are going to be moments in this particular conversation that I'm going to be talking about various scripts. You're going to be able to get those from your security benefit resource. And the good news is, you want to take notes, but you'll also receive it verbatim. I'm referring to certain scripts. But then there are going to be certain things that you're going to want to be coached on, and I'll address how you can actually have access to that. Let's just take a look first at the strategy and what I want you to write down. There's a basic formula that literally leads to access to limitless prospects. So the first step in the formula I want you to write down is acquire a client. And look, I wrote a book called Reversing the Deal Flow. I teach 34 different ways to prospect. I don't lack ways to train you on how to get that initial relationship. But look, for most of you, you already have a book of business, so you've done that first step, right? So you've acquired a client. The next step is consistently and proactively ask those clients for referrals. Then have those clients introduce you to their COIs. Now let's pause for a moment. By COIs, I don't just mean lawyers and CPAs. I'm talking about tax attorneys, estate planning resource, the insurance advisor, a lending advisor, middle market investment banker, business broker, could be property and casualty. There are a lot of COIs who impact the finances of a successful person in our society. So remember, the first step is acquire a client. The second step is ask them consistently and proactively for referrals. The third step is have them introduce you to that rather large circle of COIs. Next level, you know those referrals that you ask for? When you get those referrals, you would ask them for referrals to the people that they know who could become clients. And then you would ask them to introduce you to their COIs. And then here's what you would do next. You would ask the COIs of your clients to introduce you to the COIs that they know. And then the COIs of your referrals, you would ask to introduce to the COIs that they know. So look at this very basic formula and let me ask you, when would you run out of prospects? So first off, I don't know how many clients you have, but I will tell you that if you were to ask them for referrals, you should be able to get one or slightly less number of referrals on average as the number of clients that you have. You have 100 clients. In a year, if you had a consistent process, you probably get 100 referrals, right? The level above that is COIs. You know people have at least a lawyer and a CPA, so no surprise there. That might be 200 relationships, right? And then all of a sudden, the people that you got referred to, you open up those relationships, you open up those new accounts, those people, you ask them to refer you to the people that they know, you ask to meet their COIs. The COIs that you meet, they know lots of COIs. Come on. You know they know lots of COIs. When would you run out of prospects? Now, for many people, if you were to ask them the basic question like, okay, you know, I say acquire a relationship. Let's take an example of a very simple strategy for doing that you'll be able to get from your security benefit wholesaler, right? So let's just take a look at this basic strategy called talking to friends, family, and social acquaintances about doing business. And you ask people on a scale of 1 to 10, to what degree have you asked all your friends, family, and social acquaintances to do business with you? And that number, which I'm going to ask you to write down right now, right? So if you tell me you're a 10, you're like, Coach, I can't ask my friends, family, or social acquaintances to introduce me to more potential clients because they filed a restraining order against me because I won't stop, right? That would be like a 10. They filed a restraining order against you because you won't stop. But one would be, well, you know, I don't want to appear to be like that guy. You know that guy who's always selling something nobody wants to talk to, everybody's avoiding. I don't want to be that guy. So instead I do, I don't know, nothing. Where would you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? Now let's take a look at referrals. Okay, I know that many of you get referrals, but that's not what I'm saying. On a scale of 1 to 10, to what degree do you proactively and consistently ask clients for referrals? They're giving you referrals. Those people are set up and glad to take your communication. They're opening new accounts. If that's the case, you're a 10. I can't argue with your success. But let's say that you're someone who's receiving referrals, but you're not asking. That would make you about a 1. Where would you rate yourself on referrals on a scale of 1 to 10? COIs. You say, Coach, I'm a 10. So that means that you are consistently and proactively getting your clients to introduce you by sending a letter of introduction to all the COIs that they work with, the tax attorney, the CPA, the estate planner, the tax attorney, the real estate agent, right? All those COIs, they're being sent a letter of introduction by your client, and you're meeting these people, even over video conferencing and having an upfront conversation about having a mutually beneficial business relationship. Well, I got to tip my hat to you. You're dead. If you're like most people, you are incredibly guilty of giving referrals to COIs, but you're not getting any back. Where would you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? Now, let's say you rated yourself on friends, family, and social acquaintances, let's just say like a 5. Okay, you're leaving 50% of that money on the table. We take a look at referrals. Well, guess what? If you're, let's say, even a 6, you're leaving 40% of that money on the table. With COIs, you tell me you're a 2. You're leaving 80% of that money on the table. I haven't even asked you to reach out to a stranger. What I'm saying is, in this rather socially distant world, the single best way to reach people is through connections. And what I'm saying is that this kind of relationship marketing approach is what leads to limitless prospects. The book that I wrote that really explains this theory is called Reversing the Deal Flow. The secret to prospects calling you, asking to become clients. Imagine your phone rings, ring, ring, ring. You pick it up, you're like, hello. And the person says, look, I know you don't know me, but I've heard about you. I've only got a couple of $1 million, and I was hoping that you would consider managing my money. Now, a lot of you are thinking like, come on, coach, that's a fantasy. Come on, people don't call you saying, I want you to manage my money. Now, that's a fantasy, right? And then I remind you, Bernie Madoff reversed the deal flow, and Bernie Madoff was a crook. How does it feel to be out marketed by a crook? Do you know what that shows you? That reversing the deal flow, it's not based on business ethics. I wish it was. It's not. It's also not based on investment performance. Sadly, it's based on one thing. How well known is your practice by the people you most want to work with? Look at it this way. People can't use you if they don't know you. And my question is, right now, during a time that people most need help, how well known is your practice? Do you have access to limitless prospects? I know the reasons why you don't. You're like, hey, coach, you know what? You got to cut me some slack over here, right? With friends, family, and social acquaintances, I don't want to damage that relationship. Don't worry about that. The script handles that. You're like, well, with referrals, coach, you understand, I don't want to appear as desperate. I don't want them to think I'm needy. What if they refer me to someone who's not my right account size? How do I get out of that relationship? How do I make sure I don't offend my client? What if the other person that they refer me to doesn't like me and they actually damage my client relationship? Don't worry about that. This is not my first rodeo. Over the last 30 years, I've spoken in front of 250,000 advisors. I've coached thousands of advisors over the course of 3 decades. This is not my first rodeo. But I need you to understand that when you see the scripts, that what the style, the methodology is what we call authentic communication. Same thing with COIs, right? How many people do you think when they meet with COIs, and let's just say that a client introduces you to a COI, how many people do you think will say to a COI before they ever give them a referral, right? They'll say to them, I appreciate the fact that my client introduced me to you. I'd love to be able to refer you to people that I come across who may have a need for your services. I'm just wondering, what is your policy around reciprocity? Right? If you don't like the word reciprocity, you say to them, what's your policy around creating this as a mutually beneficial relationship? How many people do you think, that wasn't rocket science what I just said, but if you didn't say that, you've been giving referrals to COIs and they feel no obligation to send any back. I am telling you that all of these reasons Why we don't feel like we can take action is because there are things that we have not handled that would have us literally be a master of these situations. And there are four ways, only four ways to master any subject. One, study. Two, training. Three, practice. Four, coaching. Let me ask you, realistically, look at the amount of time you spend studying investments, right? How much time have you spent studying? I'm going to ask you to study literally like just a handful of scripts. I'm going to ask you to have an authentic conversation with people. I'm going to ask you to let them know why it is that you care and want to be of service to people during this time of great need. What I'm saying is that how much time have you spent training? And I will tell you, being stuck at home, you're like, well, what good is it being stuck at home? What can I do? What could I possibly do? You could train. Something that was maybe more difficult for you to do when you were engaged in the hustle and bustle and the travel and the flying, right? Now all of a sudden you have time. You could literally get a black belt in sales. You get a black belt in communication. And I will tell you, in the upcoming environment, you'll be glad that you did practice. How much time do you spend practicing? Like, be honest with Coach. Be honest with me, right? Most of us have spent more time practicing golf than we have how to ask for a referral, and then we wonder why we're not good and not comfortable. What would you expect? The key to confidence is to raise a person's competence. And the reality, if someone won't practice, I can't coach them. Do you know, in my own coaching process, which is based on my book, The 90-Day Game, that one of the key things about it, and I'll speak later about how to have high levels of literally consistent motivation, but one of the keys to success in our process is everyone that I coach is assigned by me a peer of similar production who I'm also coaching to be a daily accountability partner. So this means that the people that I coach every single week, yes, they're being tested by a coach. Yes, they're being trained by a coach. Yes, I'm coaching them. But every single day for literally just 10 minutes, they have someone to practice with. When I say practice, I mean literally get in front of a mirror with the scripts that you'll get from Security Benefit and practice. We have this rule that we call 100 reps. And what does that mean? It means that when I give you a successful methodology, before you just go off and try it, here's what you do. You get in front of a mirror, right? And you practice it 100 times until you have no attention on what to say. You have no attention on yourself. All of your attention is on the other person. That's confidence. What if you had that confidence with friends, family, and social acquaintances? You knew exactly what to say, exactly what to do. What if you felt like you literally were a master at referrals? And what if you literally had the ability to have COIs all over the place as an early warning system who can let you know when money's in motion because you've had an upfront conversation about how to have a mutually beneficial business relationship? You're going to find that a lot of issues get resolved with the script. I also know from years of doing this that some of you do better with hands-on training. And I do want you to know that if you feel like I can help you with that, you can feel free to text me. We'll have a one-on-one conversation. Don't worry about it. My job is to have the playbook. The only thing that I need you to do is execute. So for those of you who maybe get a bit stymied, you do better if you get some direct interaction. You can text me at 323-703-4830. And as I said, I don't want you to just get the scripts from Security Benefit. I'd like you to practice them. The scripts work, but you need to practice. But let's say that I'm right, for argument's sake, and you really have access to limitless prospects. You're like, oh boy, this is great, right? I have all these limitless prospects, but coach, now I got another problem. I'm like, what's the problem? You're like, well, the people that I'm talking to, The people that I get referred to, even the COIs, what they say is, I'm already working with an advisor. I talk to some of the prospects I get referred to from clients. They're like, well, I appreciate hearing from you, but I already have an advisor. Well, let me ask you all a question. What do you want them to say when you call them? Thank you for calling. I'm broke, lonely, and could use a friend? I don't think so. I think the reality is when people say, I'm already covered, I already have an advisor, I'm already happy, what that's telling you is that these individuals are indeed qualified. And this is where having a brilliant strategy, even if it leads to limitless prospects, is not enough. You literally have to have a black belt in communication these days, and you've got to be effective over this kind of a medium. I mean, Oprah, no, I'm not picking on Oprah, right? But with all due respect, she might not be, the most beautiful woman or the most glamorous woman on television. She might not have the highest IQ of everyone on television, right? But boy, does she know how to build an audience. And boy, is she able to build a bond over a video or film medium. Do not tell me that there is not a skill. I've trained many celebrities. What you don't realize is they have a coach. I've trained many politicians, but you don't realize they have a coach. I coach advisors who are literally new in the business to advisors who are very senior in the business. It doesn't matter if someone's been in the business for 30 years. It doesn't mean they know how to ask for a referral. It doesn't mean that they're good with COIs. It doesn't mean any of that. It doesn't even mean that they actually have a well thought through sales process. But I want to confront that there's another diagram that shows you why things have gotten to be a bit complicated because of what's going on with COVID. This diagram is a circle, right? So I'd like you to draw a circle. And what I'm going to show you are the 4 phases of the sales cycle. These are not just the 4 phases of a sales cycle. It's any relationship, including your romantic relationship. Let me explain the 4 phases. At the top of the circle, as if it was a compass, right? I want you to write the word leverage. Leverage. Leverage is synonymous with strategy. When I talk about all the ways to have limitless prospects, when I talk about the 34 ways that I teach people to prospect, all of those are forms of leverage. Friends, family, and social acquaintances is a form of leverage. Clients giving you referrals is a form of leverage. COIs is a form of leverage. Basically, leverage means, will you see me? Can I access you? If you have leverage, the answer is yes. If you don't, the answer is no. But the moment people meet with you, I want you to put to the right of the circle the word rapport. The next question is, do I like you? Do I like you? And this is not a one-time phenomenon, right? Right? If you're like me, you have leverage on your spouse. I have leverage on my wife. Do you know what my leverage is on my wife? She married me. Now she's got to put up with me on a regular basis, right? We've been married for like 15 years. But even though we love each other, could I come in and say something and she not like me? You have clients, you have great relationships with them, but you wouldn't say something stupid because you know that you could break rapport, you could damage the relationship. So liking is not like a one-time phenomenon. It's an always going on activity. And then there is relationship. Relationship means, do I trust you? So the 3 phases so far: leverage, rapport, relationship. Relationship is at the bottom of the circle. And what this means is, do I trust you? Do I trust you enough to tell you what's really bothering me about my current investment relationship? Do I trust you enough to tell you why I'm really delaying or why I didn't follow through? Am I really willing to go through a deep discovery process with you? You've had sales calls where you walk in, you got, I don't know how you got access to see them. They immediately like you. Next thing you know, they're opening the kimono. And you know full well when you meet someone and they start just pouring forth and outflowing their feelings and their communication, you're like, this is definitely going to go well. But then there are people who keep their cards very close to their vest. And those are situations where, candidly, we may not know what to do. Do you know that there's a series of 10 questions that you could ask someone who wasn't trusting you to actually blow that apart and to create a deep connection. But how many people are trained in those questions? And then the last phase is the recommendation, which is, will I do business with you? And this is like baseball. You do not get to skip a step. So the sequence runs like this. It first goes, will I see you? Do I like you? Do I trust you? And then we'll do business. And there is no skipping steps. This cycle could take minutes, it could take years, but there are no skipping steps. Look at it another way. You don't do business with people who you don't trust and don't like. That's a fantasy. That's like television. It's not real. So here's what I'm saying. Let's take an example. Let's take a look at a simple example. Let's say you use the script provided by Security Benefit, and you're talking to friends, family, and social acquaintances, and they're referring you, and you're talking to clients, and they're referring you, and you're meeting with COIs, and they're setting up Zoom calls and other meetings for you, and they're referring you, right? And then you get into communication with these people because you know exactly what to say, right? We even script how you handle that. And the person then responds to you by saying, I appreciate you reaching out to me, but I've got several advisors. I have a brother in the business and I'm paying very little fees. The last thing I need is another advisor. So I'm going to ask you to draw a diagram. This will be a different diagram. I want you to write down the word recommendation/request. Recommendation/request. Anytime you make any recommendation request, there's only 4 possible responses. I want you to draw 4 small arrows coming down from the words recommendation/request. And I want you to actually answer, what are the only 4 possible responses to any recommendation or request? Do you know I've never had someone get all 4 right? And when I tell you what they are, it's obvious, right? So one is they could say, yes, let's do this. Let's move forward. They could say, no, right? They could say, well, the timing's not right. I've got another advice. All of those are maybes. Or they could ask you a question. Those are the 4 possible responses to any recommendation request. Now, let's face it, you get very few straight no's. You get even few straight, you get very few straight yeses. You get very few direct no's. I'm just someone look at you and go, no, right? Come on. Realistically, you don't get a lot of no's. You get a fair amount of questions, but you get a lot of maybes, a lot of objection. How would you handle it? If someone said to you, I've got several advisors, I got a brother in the business, I don't need another advisor. Well, most of us, what we say, I think you'd agree that like a doctor, you should get a second opinion. Or some of us would say, I'm sure you'd agree that no one has a monopoly on good ideas. My question is, how often has that pithy response worked? Let's be realistic. Right? Let's take another example. Suppose you walked into the room, your wife said to you, you know what, I'm going to pick on the men because ladies, they're such an easy mark, right? Because I'm a man, I can do that, right? Your wife said to you, you know what, you're so self-absorbed. All you think about all day is your work, right? You're always in your office now working. What do we say as men? Baby, how can you say that? I brought you flowers. We went on date night. Why does this end with you sleeping on the couch? Let me explain. Your wife raised an issue, and your response was tantamount to saying, you're wrong. What you did was you invalidated your wife. Your wife's not stupid. She knows you made her wrong. You do the same thing with prospects. The prospect objects. What we do is we give them a rebuttal. It is a form of counter. By the way, when you say things like, no one has a monopoly on good ideas, I'm sure you'd agree. Like a doctor should have a second opinion. Do they go, oh my God, you're like a doctor? I was so wrong. You're so right. I'm going to give you all my money. Remind me again, how frequently has that pithy comeback worked? What does it mean to be doing the same thing, expecting a radically different result? What is that a definition of? Let's actually see, as an example of the training that we do and the coaching that we do, what is an effective way to handle an objection. The person says, let's forget about objection. Why don't we take on outright hostility, right? Just for fun. Suppose someone said to me, Serrano, you're an idiot, right? That's not just an objection. That's hostility. right? But let me show you how I would handle that. Serrano, you are an idiot. Normally, what people would say is, you know what, you've got a lot of nerve. Who do you think you are? You're a fine one to talk, right? But what if someone said, you know, Serrano, you are an idiot? And what I said is, so what you're saying is, I'm not very bright. What do you think they would say? It's funny when I do this, right? People are like, yeah. And then what I'll say is, so you wish I was smarter. They're like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. How did I suddenly diffuse the situation? I didn't agree with them. What I did was I understood them. I want you to notice that you would never allow someone to change your mind who didn't understand your mind. I did not agree with them. I understood them. So if someone said to you, I've got several advisors, I got a brother in the business, the last thing I need is another advisor. Rather than giving a counter or pithy response, what do we say? So it sounds like you've got family in the business and you're not looking for another advisor. Immediately the person verifies. They're like, yeah, that's what I said. So the actual diagram, the way that it looks is recommendation / request. There are 4 small arrows going down. Yes, no, objection, question. And when someone gives an objection, an arrow goes down from that, and the very next word is replay. And the arrow that goes down from that points to the word verify. Then we go to the 4th step, which is acknowledgement. Right? So suppose someone said to me, Serrano, you're an idiot, right? And I said, you know what? Sounds like you're saying I'm not very bright. They're like, yeah, that's exactly what I said, which is a verification. Suppose I then said to them, you know what? I want to thank you for saying that to my face. Most people who feel that way about me would say that behind my back. They lack your courage and they lack your dignity. I like that about you. A lot of people are like, they don't even know what to say to that. Acknowledgement. So if someone says, I get several advisors, I got a brother in the business, the last thing I need another advisor, what do we say? So it sounds like you've got several advisors, you've got family in the business. I would imagine you're not looking for another advisor, which by the way, lowers defensiveness. They're like, yeah. And then you're like, I want to thank you for being upfront with me. That was very generous of you. And then we apply what we call a reframe, which is where you say to them, can I ask you a question before I let you go? They're like, yeah, right? Because I've maintained rapport, because I understand their mind. When I say to them, do you mind if I ask you one last question before I let you go? What do you think most people say? They're like, yeah. I go, are you familiar with the low man on the totem pole effect? Many people are like, no. I'm like, but you do know what a totem pole is, right? They're like, yeah. I'm like, well, here's what it is. I bet you if I asked you to actually prioritize all the people that you're working with, to rank them, I'm not going to ask you to do that, but if I did, I bet you someone would be at the top and someone would be at the bottom. Would that be fair to assume? Would that be fair? People are going to be like, yeah. And then I go, guess what they call the guy or gal at the bottom? Guess what they call them? They're like, what? And what I say is the low man on the totem pole. And I like to compete for that person's business. If you were me, what would you do as the very next step for me to have a shot at competing for that business and to show you that I can do better than that by you? That's called a reframe. A reframe is not a counter. It is a way to change the problem by changing the frame around the problem. In that case, I got the person to prioritize. You know what I'm going to do? Just to show you how this works, I'm going to change all your minds at the same time. I'm going to reframe everybody at the same time, right? So just for a moment, humor me. I'd like you to think about some problem in the world that you deem to be a very serious problem: pandemic, infant mortality, drugs, disease, crime. Can you really get committed, right? I need something that you're really committed to, otherwise you won't really see the power of this. All right, so whatever problem you have in mind, I want to ask you the following question. How important will that problem be 1 billion years from now when you are fossil fuel in someone else's gas tank? How important will it be then? You want to notice that the importance goes down dramatically, if it's important at all. Did I counter your problem? Did I give you a rebuttal? I didn't even know your problem. I changed the frame. What frame did I change that time? Time frame can change the way a person views a problem. So let's say that a person understands strategically how they can have literally limitless prospects, and they're committed to mastering how to be effective with how to connect with people. Friends, family, social acquaintances can connect you with people. Clients can connect you with referrals. COIs can connect you with their clients. Let's say a person's committed to that. And let's say they're willing to learn not just how to reach people, but over a video medium and in a face-to-face sales call, how to build rapport, how to actually do deep discovery, how to actually make a powerful recommendation, how to handle questions, objections, yes, no's. Let's say a person is willing to study, train, practice, and be coached. As I said before, doesn't matter if they can't get out of bed. So let me see, can you hear me? Okay, for a moment, I thought I actually heard a voice, but I'm going to ignore it. So let me just make my point. My point is that it doesn't matter if a person isn't able to consistently apply themselves. And that's where we deal with motivation. And what I want to say specifically is that I was able to see for myself that despite everything that I was achieving, that I knew that I was operating below my full potential. Let me ask you right now, if you had to rate how much of your potential you would say you're tapping, would you really say to me that right now you're tapping 100%? Right? Listen, people don't lie to coach. You're honest with me. You know as well as I do. You're not tapping 100%, and you're doing well for someone who's not giving it 100%, right? But you're like, hey, coach, you got to be realistic with me. Like, I don't see how to do that systematically. Well, I've been able to show that there are two ways that a person is guaranteed to access their full potential. One is in an emergency, and the other is in a game. And that literally what we do is we take a person's life and we turn it into a game. Now, I know there's some background noise. I'm going to ignore the background noise. I hope that's not an undue distraction for you. And maybe I'm only hearing it on my end. But I want you to know that all games have certain things in common, right? All games have rules. All games have winners. All games have losers. All games involve competition. All games have a way to keep score. What happens when we turn a person's life into a game? And we give them literally 90 days to achieve peak performance. Well, guess what? The average increase in assets received is 300%. The average increase in business proposed is 600%. The average increase in referrals, I kid you not, 900%. How do we achieve that level of success? The answer is accountability. We've been able to prove on television that our process works 100% of the time for 100% of the people who use 100% of the system. As I shared with you earlier, the system is based on accountability. I'm going to ask you to draw one more diagram. I'd like you to put an X on a piece of paper, draw a small arrow coming out of the top, one out of the right, one out of the bottom, one out of the left. And this diagram shows 5 forms of accountability. The first thing is whether it's the scripts or whether it's training you in handling objections, any of that, basically that is what you intend to hold yourself accountable to. But then we add to that accountability to a coach. So write the word coach above the X, right? And then we give you a daily accountability partner who you're having a 10-minute daily call with, and that's accountability. And then we play together as a team, and no one wants to be the one person on the team to not perform. And then we literally have you, the arrow down to the bottom points to fans. We have you share your goals with the people in life that you would least want to let down, and we call those people fans. When a person has all 5 forms of accountability, their level of performance goes not just higher, it is consistently higher. And they are engaged every day. So I don't know if your challenge right now is more strategy, that you're not getting to enough prospects. What I know is that the scripts that you will get from Security Benefit will make a profound difference in that. I don't know if your sales cycle is getting longer, if you're just not comfortable selling over a video medium, if you lack a process, if you're dealing with stalling or objections or indecision or other advisors. I don't know. And I wouldn't blame you if you find yourself being a bit inconsistent in the way that you're prospecting or applying yourself. I get it. But what I also know is there are solutions that work. So it really is a privilege to be here with you, but it's not a one and done. Like I said, Security Benefit will provide you with the scripts. Also, if you'd like to be coached, candidly, the only way to do that is for us to have a one-on-one conversation. So just text me at 323-703-4830, and I'd be glad to have a one-on-one call with you where I can understand what are your goals and where are you most challenged. What do you most need to do to take your game to the next level and prospect successfully in this virtual world? I will say that I think there are great benefits right now. I think, for example, that relationship marketing allows us to use vehicles like LinkedIn in ways that were not available when I was a cold caller and a kid. I think that now is a time to really develop a profound process around how you handle sales calls, because candidly, many people are finding that their sales cycle is going long, it's getting extended, when the reality is there's a way to contract that by putting in place a successful, repeatable process. I think a lot of people don't admit that they're dealing with distractions and disruption, and while some days they're up, other days there's bad news and they're down. I think that that's okay. But I think the key thing to recognize is that the way to overcome these things is to get better. When you go to the gym, the weights, they don't get lighter. You get stronger. So the weights feel lighter. Real training should be harder than real life. That's what then makes real life easier. I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to you getting in the mirror and giving me that 100 reps. I look forward to all the lives that you'll touch, all the people who you will positively impact during this very difficult time. I can't thank Security Benefit enough. They understand that I'm not a one and done kind of guy, that I understand what it takes to change behavior, that I've been able to demonstrate that very successfully over many television shows now and those that are airing about my work currently. And I certainly look forward to being able to see you have the same success. So with that, I want to acknowledge that I'm at time, and I do want to return the conversation and the great experience that I know that you're having back to our moderator. So with that, thank you all very much. Be safe and continue to be blessed. All right. Bye-bye all. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
What does a handshake represent? An introduction, a connection, a promise. Security Benefit began in 1892 when 11 men with $11 created the Knights and Ladies of Security with a handshake. Their single goal was to offer insurance protection to men and women regardless of wealth. Since then, much has changed. How you plan for your future, how you retire, how long you'll spend in retirement. What hasn't changed is our core commitment to simplify complex options and offer solutions that help you prepare for a comfortable retirement. Our enduring belief that everyone should be able to retire with confidence has driven decades of dedicated focus on the retirement market. We continue to look toward the future so we can help you plan for yours. As partners, Security Benefit. Our promise, helping you to and through retirement.
morning, and thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate the time that you've chosen to spend with us this morning, as there's so many great sessions here at Connected Home. Our session today will focus on advisor growth. As you've heard countless times, advisor growth is a core tenet to the Cetera Advisor Network's value proposition for advisors. You will hear from three of your peers who will share their stories of how and why they've been successful in growing their business in this work from home world that we're part of today. Leading this discussion will be Mark Page, our newest growth officer. And for those of you who haven't met Mark, Mark comes to us with over 25 years of business consulting and practice management experience. Mark is focused primarily on serving advisors in the Midwest. So without further ado, let me turn it over to Mark.
Thanks for the introduction, Craig. Really appreciate it. And welcome to all of the advisors and office personnel who are attending the session today. We're really in for a great treat, guys. I'm so excited to have three wonderful people on the panel who also happen to be three great advisors. Each of them has a unique story on how they continue to grow their practices through this horrible health crisis. We have Scott White out of New Jersey, Majda Akwatani from Pennsylvania, and Reed Johnson from Colorado. Right before we get started, I'm just going to say we're probably going to have time for Q&A after the session, and there's going to be a chat box that you can input your questions, and that's going to be in the right side of the video player in your broadcast window. So go ahead and put your questions in. We'll get to them depending on timing, and if we're short, we're going to get those questions out to you in email format. So let's get started. Scott, let's start with you. You have a really interesting story about what you did in your practice during the early months of COVID to continue your growth path. Could you share that story with the group?
Yeah, sure can. Yeah, my son and I actually started down this path in 2018, 2019, where we had a number of clients, whether selling a business, inheriting money, selling a shore property. We had a lot of non-qualified assets, and we really struggled with, where to place those assets and where to get, the tax efficiency from the different strategists. So we investigated through My Advice Architect and found some solutions there, which, we thought would work out really, really well. And then as it turned out, we came into the year very strong. And then with the pullback in, March, we felt like it was a great time to look at the whole book and all of the non-qualified assets that we had, because it was a time where we could actually reposition, get better oversight with the portfolio, and possibly capture some losses for the clients. So we started calling all the people that would fall into that category, and just started repositioning. So it was brokerage accounts, a lot of prime accounts that were moving over to what we thought was just a better strategy with My Advice Architect and with the oversight that the strategists give us there. Yeah, so it was something that kind of fell into our laps, because of what happened during the pandemic. But it's something that the clients appreciated. We're, like I said, able to book these losses and move them into these great portfolios.
That's great, Scott. Now, during our prep call, you said you were using Prime and doing your own portfolio management until you realized, in your own words, that your returns really weren't better than outsourcing. What has your experience been with outsourcing the management, and how has that really freed up your time and affected your business?
Yeah, so through My Advice Architect, or MAA, we were able to find a number of strategists that basically did all the work for us. I grew up, doing the portfolio management myself. My son, Chris, and I, would oversee the portfolios, make the changes, do the trades. But after having hundreds of accounts, it just became onerous, for us to do it. We didn't feel like we were doing a great job. We were still getting a decent result with the portfolios, but we wouldn't say a great one. So when we were able to find, the strategists that fit into these categories, we were just amazed. We were actually able to, in some cases, actually do it at a lower cost. But the oversight is what we were really looking for, so we did that with the non-qualified assets, and then we just started migrating in different trusts, and then of course the IRA assets. So we started out the year probably about 30% in My Advice Architect, and then the rest in Prime, so about 70% in Prime. And right now we're about 85% in My Advice Architect, and loving that part. Some of the Prime accounts will never be able to be moved because of the tax situation, but the oversight that you can get from these things, we can't emphasize that enough. It's just freed up our time to focus more on the planning with our clients.
Fantastic, fantastic. Another question from our prep call, Scott, is you said one of the other reasons you went to outsourcing the portfolio management was because of the ever-changing technology. That was one of your concerns. Could you add a little color to that and kind of explain to the audience what you mean by that and what really your concern is?
Yeah, sure. And I'll go just over two stories. One, we were on a call with a gentleman, Ron Insana, last week, who was talking about, the new work age. So are you going to be going back to the office 3 days a week, staying home 2 days a week? Or are you going back to the office 2 days a week, staying home 3 days a week? So if you just looked at one scenario where you were working from home 2 days a week, all the other businesses that are going to be impacted, the fuel for your car, the tolls for the road, the lunches that you're not getting anymore, all of these changes are happening, in my opinion, at light speed. And here in South Jersey, we just can't keep up with with those changes. So allowing a portfolio strategist, a mutual fund company, an ETF strategist oversee all of these changes and deliver them to us and our clients, we just thought was a better solution. The other piece was just the 5G that's right around the corner. It's going to be a game changer for a lot of companies, and hugely, hugely positive, but it's also going to wreck, I think, other industries. So, and we're just not in the position to keep up with that rapid change.
Great. Fantastic. We got a few more minutes. Scott, anything else you want to add before we toggle over to Majda?
No, other than the fact that the focusing on the planning, is what we've been, really doing, and that's where we freed up our time with, the portfolio oversight through My Advice Architect. So if we can do that and help our clients in a better way, we think we're better positioned for the future.
Fantastic. Great. Hey, thanks, Scott. Thanks so much. Majda, let's toggle over to you. I'll roughly ask the same question I asked Scott. You have a really interesting story. When we had our prep call, I just found it fascinating. Could you tell the audience and your fellow peers what you did to excel in your practice during the last 6 months, again, during the COVID crisis?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Hello to the advisors, all the staff, and I hope everybody's healthy. We've had quite a year, and I would say I've really had quite a few years of sort of, I would call it chaos in my life. You mentioned that I'm in Pennsylvania, but my practice is in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So about 12 months ago, we made the move 2 time zones away, and really had to adjust our communications with clients. Clients actually took it pretty well. So a lot of people may think that that sort of prepared us well for COVID. I think it did. And it reinforced for clients that even though, I'm 1,500 miles away, I'm really only a phone call away. So I think clients adjusted really, really well to that. the interesting part was when we moved here, my husband does M&A for a pharma company. 18 months prior, I was single momming it with my kiddos while he was going back and forth between New Jersey and New Mexico. And so we finally arrived in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, and 6 weeks later, he found out that he was called up for National Guard duty. He's a Green Beret. So 6 weeks later, after we arrived here, he left for Afghanistan in a combat deployment. So I was sort of single momming it again. I'm trying to manage the practice from afar. And I would just say that I know a lot of advisors do this, but I think our clients have had to do this. We've had to accept this new normal. I had to accept what was happening in my life instead of being frustrated and really angry about it. And we had to figure out how to adapt. I had to do that in my personal life. I had to do it in my practice, doing it long distance. And then I really had to figure out how to leverage technology. So I admire Scott. I need to move more assets to MAA. But we did leverage AdviceWorks to help us grow. The number one thing we did, though, and I know everybody did this, is I just turned into a phone jockey. I was on the phone all the time with clients. When COVID struck and I had kids at home, my kids were in the background. I have a 4-year-old who climbs all over me. We call her the hurricane. And I had to call people once she went to sleep. You just have to find a way and adapt and, leverage Zoom, leverage different attachments that you can send to clients that make them feel like they're getting attention. We leveraged FMG. Research came out with great emails when the market was going down. We sent out some of those. We sent out some personal, more caring emails, but we just remained client focused. We wanted to know how our clients were doing, if anybody in their world or circle wasn't doing well, if they were getting groceries. We have older clients. We were worried for the whole country. And we just wanted to make sure that number one, our clients were in a good place. And I think that has led to our organic growth. We don't do any advertising with the exception of our beautiful, I think we have a beautiful website. There's no advertising that we do. It's all referrals. And that care and that touch, I think a lot of people I wanted to pull the covers over my head and not deal with things when COVID first struck. I don't know how everybody else felt out there, but I didn't want to deal with it. And I did the exact opposite, confronted it. And so our clients, maybe they were talking with a family member. I think people are communicating more with their children and their family. So we've gotten a ton of referral business because we've just been proactive.
Fantastic. You had talked about AdviceWorks. During our prep call, you said you recently implemented this. There's some advisors who are really reluctant to implement the system because maybe of the perceived learning curve. But can you tell your peers on the call, your fellow advisors, what your experience was getting set up with that, your learning curve, and how, in this own words, has been a game changer for you?
Sure. I mean, I think that AdviceWorks, if you haven't taken a look at what's available today in the recent version upgrades that have happened, the AdviceWorks of today is not what AdviceWorks was 12 months ago. It's really amazing. So we used it as a tool. I just had to make some behavioral changes that it was the first place that I logged into every day. And I'm an old SmartWorks person. I like to go into SmartWorks. That's really my first login. Then I do AdviceWorks. And if I need to, I'll go into NetX. But I can get almost everything that I need from that single sign-on from AdviceWorks. So it was really my assistant, Petrita, who, I really think I need to thank my staff. They've been amazing. They make me shine. She was the one who really said, we can open new accounts from AdviceWorks. And I was like, oh, come on, it's fine. People won't like that. Our clients aren't familiar with it. But most people have done a DocuSign. They've purchased a home or they've had to do something online, and our clients, have adopted it. What I really like is on these referrals that we're receiving, we'll do a discovery call. So Petrita will first say, well, let's make sure it's a good fit. If I have the call, it's a good fit. I set them up immediately so that they can upload their PDFs into the shared file. Also, I would emphasize to all the advisors, take a moment to log in as the client so you can see what the client sees. And so then it makes it much easier. So we upload a document. I'll be on the phone with them and I'll send them the invite. I hear the ping in their email. They open it and I'll say, I'm going to load a document for you. There we have them load in their personal information. I'll tell them we can do it for you, or you can type in your demographic information so there's no mistakes. Then we'll take that information and we use that to create the new account for them. And it's boom, boom, boom. And I told you on our discovery call that we had one situation where it was a phone call and within 5 days, ACAT was complete, money was in the account, and we were trading. It is incredible. When before we would have to procure the documents, wait for UPS to pick it up. The client would get it. Then we'd have to get the account established. Then we'd have to wait to submit the ACAT. Now it's just boom, boom, boom. We've opened individual accounts, trusts, IRAs. We've had a few snags with 401ks, but for the most part, it's good. There is a learning curve when you're using the online account opening system, and the attestation part is a little bit tricky to get through, but I would just encourage all of you to stick with it, and call the support center, the 1-800 number. They're great, or I have to call my assistant to help me through it, but it's really, really fantastic. Just stick with it.
Fantastic. Majda, we got plenty of time here. I'm going to ask you one more question. You talked about FMG Suites. Can you expand? Is that through the Marketing Central? Is that outside and directly to FMG Suites? And how are you using that to touch your clients?
That's a surprise question. So we use FMG Suites, and I would say while I really think leveraging technology is important, we're dabblers until we know that we have each new thing under our belt. So we do the birthday cards for folks. We don't want to inundate our clients too much because we don't want them to delete emails, because I know I get a ton of emails. Clients get a lot of emails. I don't want to get them so accustomed to a weekly email that they really aren't looking at. So we use FMG when I feel like we really need that contact. So when there's a lot of volatility in the market, like we're going to be sending out an email that more volatility to come, the election is less than 30 days away. If 2020 wasn't enough for all of the other reasons, now we have the election. So we use it that way. We have it linked to our website. So we have an FMG website that we Wendy Parker Wood in our office custom built for us. And, we'll just take a peek and see what's out there. We are trying to use it more. Like, for example, now that we're opening accounts online, we'd like to set up some campaigns that say, your account has funded, we need to schedule a phone call. I think that there are a myriad of ways that we could use FMG Suite. And we've only scratched the surface. It is basic contact, but there are some wonderful campaigns out there. And the new upgrade is great too, where you can custom build a newsletter particular for our particular client. So we have, some women that I'll refer to as cat ladies who love their cats. And so we can put an article about cats for that specific tag group and really send something meaningful to them and catch 10 people at once in one communication. Clients can, I think, really identify and feel when it's, this is a generic email for 500 people. We try to tailor it a little bit more.
Fantastic.
And advertising compliance, and advertising compliance is really good. We'll take the information that's there and we can make slight modifications, maybe change the greeting a little bit so that it's more us, and it feels like our practice.
Great. Last question, I promise, Majda, then we'll go to Reed. Where did you get your support for FMG? Did you get it through our marketing department? Did you go right to FMG? Where did you get it as you're busting your learning curve?
Well, I'll tell you, since I believe in leveraging technology, we've used FMG for years. That portion is really left to my support staff. I just say I'm really lucky. I get to say what I want, and then Patrita and Wendy go out and they source that information. It's a 1-800 number. It's not always the easiest, and some of it's just trial and error. Um, but I think when you invest, like just like at the beginning of a relationship with your clients, if you invest that time, like they invest the time with FMG, I invest the time with the clients to get it established, then we just go from there. So it's been hit or miss, but it's just, not giving up and sticking with it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Majda.
Thank
Reed, let's toggle to you. Like Scott and Majda, you got a great story. Found it just fascinating on how you went into really the hyper growth mode during and hindsight, you really took advantage of the COVID pandemic. But could you just share with the advisors and peers on the line on how you did that and your story?
Sure. So first, Mark, what we're doing is beginning of the year, annual meetings and that kind of thing. We're already in process. So for us, we are fee for service or financial consulting is our bread and butter. So our first meetings and working with clients were already finished by the end of February. Conversations of profit taking and all of that stuff from our accounts were already underway. And then just because of how well 2019 went, and then 2020 hit, and certainly March, the doors blew off, and for us, what we did was go straight back. Quite literally, I like Majda, I've hired people to do the things I hate or to make sure that I'm more efficient at the things that I love. And in this process specifically, I reached out to our scheduling team and said, everyone's coming in again. And this time, it's going to be on Zoom, et cetera, et cetera. And Cetera did a great job of making sure, literally as this pandemic was starting, that Zoom, as an example, we were using Skype and some other things before, phone calls, et cetera. But Zoom was ready to go. And it was really turnkey, so it made it very easy for us to make that lateral into that conversation from a client standpoint. When we were working with the clients, the conversations were multiple, various. I mean, we've educated clients for years. I've been doing financial planning with clients for more than 17 years now. So in doing this, relationship-wise, this wasn't a surprise for them, although it's been 10 years since we saw a recession, and many clients were wondering, where am I going to pay the bills from? At the end of the day, it gave us a great time to rehearse a couple of things. When it comes to clients that aren't retired yet, this is what retirement's going to feel like. You're going to be at home, so let's practice being at home, and don't kill each other, right? And that kind of thing. But instead of just doing the to-do list, let's start practicing what retirement feels like. And then we did some other things from a client's conversation standpoint. Opportunities in the market certainly abounded. We re-leveraged. We went defensive at the beginning of the year, just profit taking from 2019, and then took advantage of the market in March, and of course claimed those profits back in August this year too. But during that time, it was a conversation of opportunity, similar to. I have a weakness for Breyer's ice cream. For anyone out there that wants to buy it at $5 plus it's not quite a half gallon anymore, but anyway, I never buy it at $5, but I certainly stock up on it when it's $2.50 a piece. So that kind of thing is what we're doing when it comes to client concept and just making sure that they were taking advantage of things in the market. Specifically, also refinancing mortgages. Conversations in that were significant. We locked in rates of 2.8, 2.75, 30-year fixed, no points for jumbos, and this was just a par for the course for us. So we went into high concentration, high touch for those that are relevant, similar to Majda's situation. We already had our list of clients that needed to refinance. We already had our list of clients that were so to speak, paying more, so that we could take advantage of this and literally within a day or two, it was only a very small window, at least at first, where we could do this. We were taking advantage of that and redirecting the conversation to what we can control instead of that which we can't. Next, we used FMG, or Marketing Central. I think we transitioned, it was an automatic transition from C2C for us. And my team did all the work. I'm thankful that they're there. Very thorough effort and job there. But when they did, we were able to not do blast emails, but similar to Majda's comments, custom emails. Advanced marketing, consulting, and some of the announcements that had come out, we tweaked them and we used